Are you a young enterprising individual living in Berbice and looking to start a small business? Or maybe you are from another part of Guyana and trying to gain a skill or improve the level of your education? Are you concerned about the rights of employees? Then this week's edition of Guyana 411 will be of special interest to you. Stay tuned. Youth education is seen as vital for any country's development, and this task cannot and should not be left on the shoulders of government alone. In Guyana, many organizations are doing their part to build capacity in youths and others in various fields. The Assemblies of God Church on Durban Street in Georgetown is among those doing their part to equip youth with life skills, enabling them to develop themselves and the country. Youth education is seen as vital for any country's development. In Guyana, many organizations are doing their part to build capacity in youths and others in various fields. The Assemblies of God Church on Durban Street in Wortmanville is among those doing their part to equip youths with life skills, enabling them to develop themselves and the country.
Generation Next is, first of all, not only the vision of the senior pastor of First Assembly of God, Wortmanville, Reverend Martin Raphael Messiah, but it also came out of a concern that he had of the state of hopelessness of young people across the country, and more specifically those young people who are located in the periphery of the southern part of the country, the Wortmanville area, where First Assembly is located. And what was startling was the fact that the young people could not read. So when Generation Next was conceived, it was conceived as a remedy to mitigate the hopelessness of the young people. So we started with a reading program, and then we moved into the remedial program. And we believe that the formula to deal with that was teach a child how to read, and that child will read on his or her own. So that is the trust behind why the organization was started.
Indeed, the role of educating our young people should not be left solely on the shoulders of the government. When civil society, the churches, non-governmental organizations, and other agencies join the effort, then the chances of our youths getting an education is multiplied. In this way, our young people are better prepared to make meaningful contributions to Guyana's development.
We're twofold. We teach life skills training, and we also have a component of the academics. So we look at the school age from earliest kindergarten. We teach them phonics, building words, how to read, the formative years for literacy. And we also do the primary level support, where we work with them through their school work in the areas, the 4 areas where they prepare to enter into the secondary school system. And we have all of the subjects offered in the secondary school curriculum.
Generation Next is just one example where leaders in society, not political leaders, but those persons who are committed to the nation's development, are offering opportunities for youths. Many persons who realized the value of the skills being taught, and even those outside of the initial areas targeted, have taken the opportunity to participate.
Some persons, because of this, they're unable to pay. And what we have done, we have facilitated. We haven't turned anybody away. We facilitated those persons. And some persons were so kind enough that they have paid money in order to sponsor people to attend the program.
Some of the future plans include the expansion of the school feeding program, which caters for approximately 400 students each week at 3 schools.
We want to go into the communities, and we want to engage the communities and bring that fundamental literacy back into the communities. And we want to target not only the children, but also the parents who might have difficulties and who might not want to come to Generation Next. They might not want to be seen publicly learning how to read. So we want to have that as a part of what we do at Generation
And
Next.
then going to the community too would help us to determine the needs. Because sometimes you might sit here and say, these are the needs for the community. But when we go, well, we've gone before, we want to do it in a great way. We go and you get an idea as to what are some of the needs so we can adequately address those needs.
The church is one of several organizations across Guyana that is helping to develop youths meaningfully. Similar training is being offered at the Sophia Training Center, the Open Door Center for the Differently Abled, under the Board of Industrial Training Center via the Ministry of Social Protection and Labor, the Kurukuru College on the Linden-Suzdijk Highway, and the Guyana Technical Institute. Before the commissioning of the Berbice River Bridge, did you stop for a good Guyanese snow cone at the Rossignol or New Amsterdam Stelling? Or had a puri or some other snack whilst you waited on the ferry? Have you wondered what happened to those vendors since the bridge was opened? Business and commerce in the West Berbice area, especially in areas such as Rossignol and the Cotton Tree Village, have now been given a second lease on life. As the area, which was once dead economically, will soon be resurrected as government plans on introducing a water taxi service plying the Blairmont, New Amsterdam, and Rossignol routes.
In keeping with our commitment as a government, I have last week gone to Cabinet and they have approved us introducing a river taxi service between both Rossignol and Blairmont to New Amsterdam.
The move by the administration to introduce water taxis resulted from the refusal of the management of the Berbice Bridge Company to accept a subsidy which would have seen commuters paying a reduced toll.
As you know, the government has made an approach to the Berbice Bridge, and for a subsidy to be provided to the Berbice Bridge. This subsidy is for $300 for vehicles, motor vehicles, and 10% off. So to the gentleman there, also 10% off of the cost for any other modes of transportation crossing the bridge. It is phase one. It is our intention that obviously every year progressively we would, reduce or increase our contribution, our subsidy, until it is at a level which both the government can sustain and the commuters find acceptable and reasonable. As you would also know, so therefore in 2015 budget we had made a specific number, 13.5% for motor vehicles, for cars and minibuses, and 10% for all other means of transportation. As you're well aware, the discussions are not moving apace as we would have anticipated, and primarily for the fact that, and we do acknowledge it, primarily for the fact that the Berbice Bridge Association has put up the position that there are other issues which they would like to discuss, which we said to them that we have no problem in discussing, but at this initial stage, whatever happens, this is what the government is going to do. We said, so they've asked us for extend the length of time over which the concession period with, and several other things, which we said we are very willing to discuss. But at the end of the day, whatever the final results of the discussion, this is what the subsidy the government will be providing to the bridge. And I say that in light that if the discussions, so we were saying to them, look, you were saying that you need to increase fees, and you're trying to justify it or not. So, but irrespective if you justify it, for example, if the bridge toll is raised to $3,000, government will still be putting in $300 for motor vehicles, and still be providing 10% reduction for other vehicles crossing. So we said, and our position is, delaying implementing this agreement is really immaterial in the sense that Transport and Harbors has advised that both Rossignol and New Amsterdam Stellings are in a position whereby we could start immediately. Blairmont needs some minor work, which is for security purpose. They've also advised us that I could have started the river taxi service immediately with boats already registered within our fleet. I considered it and I thought it was inadvisable because that's why I wanted to meet you here, for example, because it will be a service for Region 5 and Region 6. And I would prefer, and the government would prefer, if the river taxis are from Region 5 and Region 6, as opposed to my getting taxis which existing in our fleet. One of the discussions I want to have with you is I can have temporarily, maybe for a month or so, I can put on the river taxis from my fleet until residents within the area are registered and brought up to scratch from Region 5 or 6 or whatever it is. They would, Transport and Harbors will be coordinating the activity. Of course, we have specifications for the river taxis, but I think it's something that should be done regionally because obviously the beneficiaries should be the region. Secondly, Minister Ferguson will be meeting with the Minibus and Taxis Association during the course of this week to ensure that, one, that they understand what's going on and they're compliant and they're up to regulations.
The dreaded fears of many were confirmed when the opening of the Berbice Bridge occurred. Whilst it was welcomed as a faster means of travel, with commuters not having to spend lengthy hours in queues just to get across to Rosignol, New Amsterdam and further afield, businesses in the neighbouring areas suffered. This was because commuters no longer had the opportunity to shop and patronize businesses and roadside shops, since they instantly travelled over the bridge and were being diverted from central Rosignol.
The coalition government is determined to give power back to the people so they can be a part of the developmental process of their communities and the improvement of their lives. It was on this premise that the requisite legislation was passed in the National Assembly, making way for the holding of the long-awaited local government elections.
The Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana states, local government by freely elected representatives of the people is an integral part of the democratic organization of the state. Since 1994, when the last local government elections were held, Guyanese have been denied the opportunity to elect their local leaders. This was one of the factors that contributed to the erosion of democracy in Guyana. But now the way has been cleared and Guyanese will once be able to enjoy their constitutional and democratic right to elect their local leaders. The Local Authorities Elections Amendment Bill No. 9 of 2005 will not only give power to the people, but also pave the way for the early hosting of local government elections.
But what we have heard here this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, the arguments being advanced, suggests to us on this side of the House that there is a marked unconcern for people's plight. But I would like to assure the honourable members that the Guyanese people will not for any longer be treated with disrespect. That we have heard their cries, we feel their pain, and we will discharge our responsibility to allow for them to enjoy their constitutional right to enjoy local democracy. So, Mr. Speaker, it is this administration that has the responsibility to ensure that these elections are held. It seems to me, as I have said, that the opposition are reluctant for the early holding of these elections. But we say unequivocally and unambiguously that the time for those delays must end.
The legislation, which was passed on September 9, 2015 in the National Assembly, has been identified as the first step in the administration's efforts and commitment to repair the system of local government and local administration, which has collapsed as a result of neglect and political interference. With the passage of the bill, the Guyana Elections Commission can now commence the process forward for the holding of these long-awaited elections.
We could not, or we will not, seek to name a date for the holding of the elections until we are so advised by GCOM as to what is the soonest possible and practicable date for GCOM to be able to have these elections done efficiently and with a high degree of integrity. But it has always been the position of the administration that we are committed and we are desirous of having these elections held as soon as GCOM have advised us that they are in a position to hold these elections. So nothing has changed in this regard. We will now indicate to GCOM formally that the administration is desirous of having these elections held at the earliest possible date. And once we are in receipt of a reply from GCOM, then I, as Minister, will proceed to name a date for the holding of these elections. Perhaps I should also make mention that we are not too far away from December, and it was never the anticipation or expectation that we would have these elections held too close to Christmas. So I believe it is fair to say that that would be a consideration as far as GCOM is concerned. And I think one of the things that came out in the debate here today is, given the new feature of these elections, which allows for constituency representation and the creation of 585 constituencies across the 71 local authority areas, that the logistics that arise from that fact are going to pose quite a serious challenge to GCOM. And given that this is the first time that an elections will be held with that feature, I believe caution might be the watchword. So I don't want to prejudge and preempt what will be the response from GCOM, but we will have to wait until we are advised by GCOM.
While the bill was put forward by the government, it has benefited from the insertion of 2 clauses which were put forward by the opposition in the National Assembly.
The honourable member is proposing verification. And the last time we talked about verification in Ghana by GCOM, elections had to be pushed back for a substantial period. Anytime we were to agree to this verification, we are talking about holding elections maybe a year from now, because verification would have to be a national exercise. A national exercise. And we're talking about a just concluded elections where all those things were dealt with. And the same register we are proposing to use. That's why we have this amendment here, that we are not using the 1992 register. We're using the last register of registrants. So it is unconscionable, since they had accepted that, for them to ask us now to do another verification. It is clear that would show back on Hamburg elections and prevent elections from being held in the near future. And we would reject this, sir. We would reject any attempt to postpone these elections.
Local government elections were last held in Guyana in 1994.
Most of the young men and women working in the stores along Regent Street and elsewhere come from poor homes, and many would not have had the opportunity to complete their secondary education. This makes them vulnerable to unscrupulous employers who exploit them. These workers, however, have rights, and the government is moving to ensure that these rights are protected.
Most of the young men and women working in stores come from very poor homes. Many of them were not able to complete their secondary education. They earn very little but are made to work very long hours under very poor conditions. Their employers very often care more about profits than the humans they exploit. Since coming into office in May, the coalition government has demonstrated that things will be done differently in this country. It has been labeled a fresh approach. In that fresh approach, protecting and ensuring the rights of workers is a top priority.
It's not only Regent Street or in Georgetown, but it is countrywide. We do have officers going countrywide already, conducting inspection, but I myself will visit many areas, many as possible, that I am trying to make a special time, a special effort to come out and to be a part and to see what is happening in terms of inspection, so that we can evaluate and what are the compliance really. It's things really changing, yes or no. We must be very honest and accurate in reporting that. Just the store before we managed to settle a complaint, we had a work of $30,000 was being paid on behalf of the worker. Again, since I'm there, because of the approach, we have over 50 million $500,000 being paid to workers. So in that case, and that just to tell you what is really happening outside, workers are working and they'll be dismissed, just go home, you have no money to get it, and that is just it. And it seems to be a norm, and that is not a norm. It ought not to be like that.
Regent Street businesses have been told to get their house in order or face prosecution for violating the rights of workers. A number of violations and breaches of the labor laws were found on this one visit. Employees' contributions to the National Insurance Scheme were being deducted but not paid over to the scheme. No proper records of employees' wages. Some stores had no business registrations, are among others.
I managed to call in, myself and the staff, employees who had lost hope, and they came there yesterday. One received $270-something thousand, another $100-something $1,000. So it is something that was deliberate out there, where persons were bullied, persons worked, and be told, we won't pay you, do what you want, you can go to labor. And so that is a bad practice. Coming out from Regent Street and the stores and all of that, what we find blatantly, we've had officers come in through here before. I've been sending officers, but compliance, persons are not complying. Like, for example, you would have heard a store owner here saying, I don't have a system in how I pay them. They don't sign. I just pay them. So how could you deal with the NIS? And you have a whole lot of problems like that. And these things under this new administration and this government life, in the fresh approach that we talked about, the fresh approach would be very wide.
There was a prevalence of poor working conditions, employees working over 40 hours per week without being paid overtime, being paid under the minimum wage, having only 10 minutes of lunch, no proper lunchroom or restroom facilities, no first aid kit available in the event of accidents, and safety mechanisms such as fire escape or fire extinguishers were found to be absent from most businesses.
I'm here this morning myself to support the staff and to make it known very strong in a strong way that compliance is a must. You have a business and you have a store, and we conduct the inspection and we give you a period, and one failing to obey the law, then we'll move to the other stage, because there are provisions in the law that we could move beyond just come in and conduct an inspection.
Since the government took over in May, some $16 million have been awarded to workers whose rights were violated. This is just the beginning. It is the view of the minister that the penalties attached to the breaches of the labor laws are paltry, and a review must be done so that fines and penalties become a deterrent to those employers who think they can take advantage of persons in difficult circumstances.
One of the main things for an improved quality of life is for people to access better housing. Recognizing this, the government is working to ensure that private housing developers along the east bank of Demerara and elsewhere put the necessary infrastructure in place so that more Guyanese can enjoy the comfort of owning their own home.
We want to have development, we want to have it with a human face. So we have low-cost houses, which the government itself on the rights. But we also have the encouragement of developers. And to do that, they have got to fulfill their part of the agreement. That part of the agreement is for them to access the land, put down internal drains, internal roads, and also to build houses within a given time. What I've seen in some cases here, nothing has been done. What I've understood is that in some cases, persons or developers have even resold areas, given them by change of names of the directors of companies. So companies, although they have the same names, in theory they are now owned by different people. We're not going to go into that legal aspect of it, but what we're going to go into is that we're insisting that whoever is responsible in terms of the agreement, they must honor that by having development within a given time frame.
Government is clamping down on those private housing developers who are in possession of hundreds of acres of land in prime areas on the east bank of Demerara, and are still to start or in some cases resume works so that persons can begin to occupy those lands. Some of these areas include Baishangling, Courtney Bend Construction, Bradford Enterprise, Dax Construction, Sunset Lakes, and Odingalabumba. The minister with responsibility for housing, Keith Scott, recently visited these areas and expressed dissatisfaction with the scope of works that was done to develop these areas.
We have met a few others like Dax, and we've had talks and they have agreed that they have fallen behind and that they shall be within a certain time frame which I've given to them, will be doing better. In today's meeting we had Bayesian Ling and Sunset Lakes, and they came in with their people, their senior people, and they apologized for having not been able to deliver. We expressed our disappointment, and out of that meeting, we have pointed out to them where they have breached the agreement which they have with the Ministry of Housing, and they agreed to do that they have. And as developers who we want to all encourage, we have not here to put people out of business, but to help them along the way, ultimately to the benefit of all Guyanese. So what we have agreed on is that they shall be given some time between now and February the 15th and February 2016 to honor the terms of their contract, and we have already agreed to establish a monitoring unit which will pay them regular visits to see that they stick to the new revised program that they shall be giving us. They said they shall be giving us a revised program with time frames, and so it end by February, which that one ends, and we'll go forward from there.
Visits were also made to Perseverance Phase 3, Providence, where the turnkey homes are being constructed, the migrant housing scheme, and the areas that are to be developed behind Little Diamond and Prospect. The Housing Ministry will immediately be installing the necessary infrastructure in keeping with government's policy to have cohesive communities.
The immediate thing that we got to look at is that there's need for us to establish a well, because the water is one of the most critical aspects in terms of development. That is going to cost quite a few dollars. But once you have that, the electricity will follow. The lots have been already marked out, and they are even the developers were on the ground. I can't remember his name, Rayban or something like that, Bradford, and there is some movement in that respect. Our new policy in this new government, AP and AFC, is that we have cohesive communities. Our emphasis therefore is on cohesive development. What existed in the past is what I would call a collapse, or Ali himself called a collapse system, where he was talking about giving people house lots. This is the reason why he was able to say, I can give out 20,000 house lots. We are not into that. We are into making people live a human life, where people can live as a villager. A village develops a child, where we can make people see that it's not a house lot we are about. We are about a community becoming one. And that through that, a nation can develop. And we are pursuing that goal. This is why we are interested in having just more than a house lot, more than just a house, but a total community that which I have already spoken to in the press. So it's not a question of numbers and that you give out so much. And this also comes with the fact that we inherited a backlog of houses, about 20,000 or 25,000, people not being able to access, because it's just they were concentrating on giving a lot. And in some cases, some people have been ripped off where they have got a lot, they can't identify it. And in some cases here, you have people have a lot and they can't move forward. But this is what we do not intend to have going on any longer. When a person gets a lot within a very short time, within a matter of months, they must be able to see progress on the ground. They must be able to see a road, they must be able to see a drain, they must be able to see lights being put in. And we are about that. And that would mean development in the human face and in an obviously measurable position.
Housing is the single most important factor of Guyana's economic development, and as such, government is working to create the enabling environment to ensure that more and more Guyanese enjoy the comfort of owning their own home in a cohesive community.
Thank you for watching Guyana 411. Until next time, take care.